Welcome to DIY 360. Yeah, huh? How about a little of that? That's what we like. I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves. We've got a really interesting panel today of all IPR grads who have gone on to do something amazing, not just in the music business, but in the music business in Minneapolis that I myself and the entire city benefit from, and they're going to tell you all about it. So starting here and going down, who are we?
I'm Molly Murray. I'm the current concert coordinator for the Minneapolis Parks.
Geoff Walsh, former concert coordinator for the Minneapolis Parks and current sound tech for the parks.
Jessica Berg, former concert and event coordinator for Minneapolis Parks, current academic coordinator and freelance sound engineer.
We've worked together at the Dakota, as well as other certain dive bars around town, I'm sure, where we run into each other. So let's start off with a little background here. Now, Molly, I had you, did I have you in AP 200? Or was it session psychology?
I wish it was session psychology.
It wasn't, yeah, but that would help you in your job now. I can't remember what class I had you in.
I think I only had a lab with you.
A lab?
Yeah.
AP 200 lab,
Yep.
right? Yeah. And so how long ago did you graduate?
2009, so coming up
2009.
on 4 years.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up near Rochester, Minnesota, so about an hour south of here.
And you moved up here to go to IPR?
Yeah, I went to Duluth St. Scholastica first before I came here.
Oh,
so.
okay. And after you got out of IPR, were you primarily engineering, or were you business, or were you both?
I went engineering side.
And
right
here you are in the business.
Here I am in the business side of things. So.
What did you do at first when you got out of IPR?
The first thing, I got an internship at the Basilica running sound there, and they hired me on within a month, and so I've been there since.
Running in the Basilica?
Running, yes. Literally running.
I just did my first gig there. Unfortunately, it was a funeral for a good friend of mine, Sue McLean.
Yeah,
I
that was
played
a big funeral.
Yeah, that was there was standing room only. That was a tough gig for me because we were very close, and I had to play a song without crying, and it was hard, but on a very impressive room. So do you run sound in there?
Yes.
That must be challenging, because that's a chamber.
It is. The reverb time is 10 seconds. So if you can only imagine how long the sound just stays in there, it gets difficult.
But it's a pretty good system in there, though.
Yes,
It felt like
brand
it when
new.
I was playing.
They just put it in, I think, 5 years ago. So if you look in the Basilica, you can't even see the speakers because they're little noise on the pillars. So.
And do you do anything with the Basilica Block Party then, too?
They hire out for that. I know.
Probably not even Catholics, too. What are they
Probably
thinking?
not.
Anyway. So then how did you get involved with music in the parks?
Well, it's thanks to Geoff. We did AES in a couple of classes together.
Maybe one or two.
One or two classes together. And when he was brought on as a concert coordinator, he called me and is like, hey, you want a job? And I said, yes, I do.
Being no dummy, you said, yes, I do. And so how long have you been doing it?
This is the 4th year?
Yeah, I think that's right.
4th year, all right. So you have 2 gigs, the Basilica and this, and do you have other things too? You're running sound freelance, right?
Yep.
What kind of gigs?
Whatever bar gig comes about.
Like what venues typically?
There's one up in Ham Lake that Ethan Bouchard, I don't know if you know him, he gets me hooked up there. Club 3 Degrees used to be a one that I would do. Not too much else.
So you're running sound at the Basilica. Sometimes you're running at a scuzzy bar Saturday night and then at the Basilica Sunday morning?
Yeah.
Well-rounded we are. Nice. Now, Geoff, are you from Florida originally?
Yes, I am from Florida originally.
And what possessed you to move to Minneapolis from Florida? Was it IPR specifically?
That was a big part of it. I did want to go back to school and study audio, and my wife is actually from this area. She moved here out of college, so we had sort of a Minneapolis connection already. So I started researching schools in the Twin Cities here, and we toured 1 year and decided, well, yeah, this would be the place to come. So we packed our bags and moved up here from Florida in the winter of 2007.
And you said that one of the first things you did when you guys got here was you saw something at the Lake Harriet band show?
That's correct. We came up here Labor Day weekend, toured IPR, and my wife said, "Hey, let's check out this free summer concert at the Lake Harriet Band Shell." And so we went out there, and it was the band was the Abdomen, currently known as Lyndhurst. So we were sitting out on the grass lawn, and I think my wife said to me, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if you worked here?" And lo and behold, through IPR, I met Jessica Berg, who was the concert and event coordinator at the time. It was actually in a panel sort of like this, and I asked her, about the concert series, and she gave me a job, and the rest is history, I guess.
Nice. So your wife is kind of like a visionary or some sort of like fortune teller.
She is, yeah.
That's good to have in the family. And so now, what other gigs do you do besides you did the music in the parks thing? What else? What other kinds of things are you doing?
Sure. I have a full-time gig as a tech director at New Hope Church, and I also do a lot of freelance production with various production companies around town, whether it's like a corporate gig or something like that. So,
where's this church that you work?
It's in New Hope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so you're doing not only like rock band live sound, but you're doing for corporate events and things like that?
Yep, audio visual and everything that is included in that, from projection to lighting to sound and video. So
And are you working for a company that does that, or are you just doing it yourself?
Well, when I do I'm on staff there as a full-time person, but when I do freelance stuff, I am just contracted out.
Nice.
Yeah. No, not anymore. Sometimes I work with Audio Logic Systems. Most of the time, it's with a company called Event Pro.
I've worked with them.
With Neil Wallace, who was the
Yeah,
owner.
yep. Right. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a couple of shows with them where I showed up and they were in charge. They were fantastic.
And another IPR connection, John Stojovich, owns his own company, Dynamic Show Productions, so he's hired me out a couple times to work with him on some corporate events.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm keeping busy.
Now the blonde down there at the end there. Hey, man.
Hey, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. This is fun. I like it when I get to do DIY with pals. So why don't you tell us your story now? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Crystal, and my dad moved out to Colorado up in the mountains when I was about 14. So I spent a lot of summers out there, moved out there for a stint, came back. Decided to go to IPR. I graduated December of 2004.
Okay.
So.
And you were engineering?
Yeah, audio engineering. Got Pro Tools certified in music and post in 6.0. That was like old school.
I picked up on it and I liked it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And while I was in school, I had started freelancing, running live sound for Le Cirque Rouge Burlesque Cabaret Troupe. They had called here looking for a woman to engineer, and they threw everything at me, so it was great, like training ground. But I was also freelancing in studios, voiceover studios, A440, and I actually heard about this position through Santa at Career Services. So I had been keeping in touch with the IPR, Career Center, and as everyone here should. And
well, people I get attitude from the students sometimes. Oh, there's never anything good on there. It's like, well, right now the Children's Theater is looking for a tech for the season there. Which you won't find a more sophisticated, interning gig in town. Mm-hmm. Speaking of everything being thrown at you, and my old friend Rick Berger is like the guy there, my old bass player. Nice. And they're like calling us every week saying, please send us a kid, and we can't find a student to sign up for. So yeah, Career Services, that website, you may have to wade through some, stuff of like, I don't know, working at UPS or whatever's on there that you're not interested in, but there's gold in there. Mm-hmm. Obvious example here.
Yeah, so the job came through on like the list of jobs, and I called Santa. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She's like, yeah, you would be perfect.
Nice.
She didn't have a direct connection. She just got the feed about the job. And so I applied, and it's the park board. So I don't know if you're familiar. Most cities have a department of the city that's the parks. Minneapolis set up a semi-autonomous board of commissioners to run the parks and keep it separate from the city. And this was started by the land barons in the late 1800s. that wanted to protect our resources and our land. And so that still holds true today. So, all three of us in this position working for the parks are civil servants. So, I mean, it is, that government job on one hand, dealing with government folks, and then artists on the other hand, and trying to bridge that gap and that language.
That can be a wide gap.
Right. Yes. But, I went through long hiring process and was hired and started October 2006. And at that time, there had only been a part-time person trying to run music in the parks up until then. And this had been going on for well over a decade, and they finally decided, good people got a hold of it and were like, we need a full-time person in to just whip it into shape. And so they handed me a bag of keys and a stack of mismatched papers, and they're like, by the way, can you start up a third venue and create a directory of performing artists for us? And kind of gave me these jobs and just let me run with it. I had great management who really were supportive of ideas. The staff, the sound techs that had been involved, half of them were pretty disgruntled, and so I hired half new people. And
So you completely fired the other half.
no, they did it to themselves. They really weren't communicating well, and other people were, so those are the ones that got the job. And just started building up an amazing team. And the unfortunate thing, which is kind of odd, the guy before me, he was a straight sound tech. I mean, he didn't want to deal with any paperwork, spreadsheets, none of that. He just wanted to do his job and do it well. And the gal before him, she was a full-time park person, where this was just something added to her plate, so she wasn't in the music industry. Both of those people passed away from cancer. I never got to meet them. And so all we had to go by were stories and what some people knew about it, and pretty much
you really
everybody
had to
said
build this up with hardly any.
lots of duct tape, angry people, creating documents from the ground up. Had some things to go by, but everybody was basically like, you're the expert. So that's when started just tapping into the team of sound techs. In the first season I ran it, I had lead sound techs for each venue that I heavily relied on, because each venue also needed a lot of work on the technical side. I mean, Lake Harriet was falling apart in a really bad way. The bandshell, the current bandshell, was built in 1986. The first ever bandshell was built in 1886. So music in the parks has been going on for about 130 years. This is the 5th incarnation of a bandshell in about the same spot. There's lots of folklore.
1886. So that one didn't have subwoofers built into the stage then.
No.
That didn't come along until like the 20s, 1920s, I don't think.
Yeah, it was all based
Jay
on
would know
acoustics.
the answer to that.
Yeah. No, I think it was 1907 they built a wagon, a stage wagon, to pull around with horses so that they could do impromptu concerts on the fly. And it was like 1922, I think the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra, which is now the Minneapolis Pops Orchestra, started playing at Lake Harriet. Lake Harriet's their home. So they've been going for almost 100 years there. And so just to kind of delve into the history, in like the 80s and early 90s, the park music was like really happening. There was a lot of big artists coming through, there was funding, and then whoever, I don't know who was running it at that time, but then, it changes hands, it gets in under different departments, things shift, and it just kind of went through a rough patch. And then we came along and kind of built it up as a team, really, truly, with support of good people in all different parts of the park board. I mean, we're dealing with anybody from commissioners to the groundskeepers and the recreation people, and I mean, everybody in between. You got to know people in every department. You guys know, and just really be an advocate for the music in the parks and how much it adds to the community, and it's been such a rich history of Minneapolis.
And you have to have people skills, because you guys are trying to build something here with very little money. So people have to, if they're going to work for you, it's because they love you and they love what you're doing. You know what I mean? So if you have a lot of money, you can get people to do stuff even if they hate you because you're paying a lot of money, but you guys don't have that luxury. You get, speaking as a someone who's played in the parks for years, usually Lake Harriet, it's not just my opinion, but it's all of the musicians I play with, Peter Anderson, Steve Price, Allison Scott, all of us. That's easily one of our favorite gigs of the year. It's magic down there, what you guys have. You know, and I'm saying that as a Jewish musician who's playing for nothing. We don't get paid to play there. So we play there because every time I show up, whoever the sound person is, and I've worked with a few different ones down there, they're all fantastic, and their attitude is always great. The venue is obviously special, and there is something special about playing in a place where they've had music for 100 years. You know, the crowd is built in, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen music at the Lake Harriet Bandshell. Have any of you guys ever seen it? It's one of those things that makes Minneapolis a better place to live than other cities. It's amazing. A bunch of little kids dance in front of the stage. I don't care how old or cynical of a musician you are. When you see that, you're like, this is cool. And now the restaurant behind the bandshell that used to be a little dodgy is now awesome. Try the walleye. So it's really one of the best experiences of the summer, and I bet you I'm not the only musician in town to say that. Not to mention the way you guys have built up the Minnehaha Falls thing, because that used to be a nothing too, right? Mm-hmm. And now you've got sea salt there, and it's just like, it's cool. It's really a cool place to play music. And then the third one is Hennepin?
Father Hennepin Bluffs, and then after that, Bryant Square Park was added, and then after that, Nicollet Island was revived. So there's currently 5 venues. Mm-hmm.
Nicollet Island I used to do that one back in the 80s, and then they stopped for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. That was the jam in the 80s. I mean, hundreds of people would show up, and they'd have like dance troupes in there as well as music. I didn't even know that was back. How long ago did you guys bring that one back?
Yeah, well, that came back about 3 years ago. I don't know who made the decision. I think it was maybe some pressure from the local neighborhood organization to
they wanted it?
Yeah, they wanted it back.
So there's a lot more people around there now with all the condos on either side of the river from that thing, right?
Exactly. So, they said, hey, let's open up Nicollet Island again. So we used to have shows at Father Hennepin Bluffs, which is the north entrance to the Stone Arch Bridge. So we basically just split that. It was Monday and Tuesday, so we split that in half. We did Monday down at Nicollet Island, and we continue to do Father Hennepin on Tuesdays.
So are people showing up again now to the Nicollet Island thing?
Absolutely.
Because it's a little magical little secret little hideaway.
Yeah, if you wouldn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there.
But if you go in there, it's a natural amphitheater, and it's just stunning.
It is. It really is. And the crowds have been growing consistently year by year.
Oh, so. I'm so happy that's back there, because I played there a bunch of times in the 80s with different horrible bands I was in, but we always had such a great time. Yeah,
it's a great venue.
And so how about the Father Hennepin one? What's that venue like? That's the one I haven't played.
Well, that one we got going 2007, and during that time, a gentleman, Corky, who works at the parks, who's kind of a magical being of sorts. He's really been a strong advocate and supporter all the way along, no matter what position he holds in the parks. But he hooked up with Best Buy, and Best Buy gave it a facelift, painted it up, brought in flowers, and just really made it look welcoming. It had just been concrete blah before that. But the backdrop is downtown skyline, the Stone Arch Bridge, the river. I mean, it's gorgeous. And kind of an unfortunate story. Well, when I was running a show there the night that the bridge collapsed, 35W, and our band was still en route, and my other sound guy I was with ran down to help people. That was a really intense day for us, and other venues were calling, like the guys, because there's always multiple concerts going on. Like each day there's like more than one venue usually running. And everybody's like, should we go on? You know, and I was just like, well, leave it up to the musicians and what they're feeling. You know, keep the music alive. It's a tragedy, but you know, music must go on if you're so inclined, and just kind of left it up to the individuals. But the band ended up being safe. We cleared out quickly because that ended up being a staging area for a lot of the emergency personnel and then international media. But we ended up coming back the end of that season, I think, once things kind of quieted down. So.
How many shows per summer with the 5 venues? Ballpark me. Or do you know exactly?
Like 220.
220 shows you do a year.
In 90 days.
In 90 days. Holy crap.
You are welcome.
Okay, so outside of let's hear from each of you now. That was your, I don't want to say worst, but most challenging night in this gig. What's your, I don't hear one war story.
Well, my, I guess, worst is when well, two of them, two worsts. Double booking, that's always terrible because you have to call one band and say, sorry, I double booked, and then they get mad, and then you have to offer them something worthwhile for them to, you know, calm down. So I did that once last year. Gosh, the other worst, well, it's a worst but a best. Speaking of Father Hennepin, we often have a concert there for the 4th of July, and people constantly rush the stage afterwards to try to get a view of the skyline and watch fireworks. So there's, you know, we've been trying to set up barricades, and yes, this comes around to you, Molly. We set up barricades, but you know, they move them and walk by, so
so they're not really barricades.
No,
then.
they're suggestions. So the worst part is, you know, people basically undo all the work we tried to do by keeping them off the stage. But then this year, it was great to see Molly like yell and almost get in a fist fight with a very large guy that was interested in going up on the stage after the show. So
I could just see you, Molly. It ain't Woodstock. Back off.
Yeah. So
It's my favorite part of the season, actually, yelling at people.
yeah. So from a low point into a high point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Molly, most challenging day in this job.
It wasn't with the music in the parks, it was the movies in the parks. There was one night we were playing The Sandlot, and
Great movie.
yes, but there's a storm coming. And the tech I was working with was like, oh, we'll play it out. It looks like it's just going to go south. It's not going to hit us. And I was like, you know, it's lightning out. I don't like this. Can we please stop? And he's like, no, we'll keep going. The park director said the same thing. No, just keep going. And at one point, it lit up like it was noon outside, and it was so bright. And I hit the faders, and I shut everything off, and I was like, we're done. Have a nice night. And it, like, as soon as that happened, it just started downpouring, and I remember just yelling at the guy I was working with, like, I can't believe you made me do this.
Well, it's dangerous. I mean, Keith Relf, after the Yardbirds, he went on to have a band, Renaissance, and died on stage from getting electrocuted. So, I mean, this stuff, it's real. Okay, now putting you on the spot, favorite thing that's happened, funnest thing that's happened, or best show you've seen that you booked or anything like that?
My favorite thing just actually happened this year. We did the Minnesota Opera at the Lake Harriet Bandshell. 4,000 people down there.
Oh, my God.
It was nuts, but it was so cool to see so many people down there. So that's been my favorite part.
That's amazing.
I'm still thinking of one because I have so many favorite memories.
How Lake Harriet got upgraded?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yes. We were talking about this earlier. Thank you. That was what I wanted to say. The big news at Lake Harriet was we just got a new PA down there for this season.
Which kicks ass, by the way. I just played there.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it was a collaboration, not necessarily a sponsorship situation, but we worked directly with the engineers at EV or Bosch Communications, their parent company. So they actually came out, the engineers came out, spec'd out the band shell, and work directly with the vendors to come up with some designs. So a little bit of history. I teched for 2 years under Jessica, and then I coordinated for 3, and then now I'm back to tech again underneath Molly. And the whole time, you just get to see, like, wow, we could really use a spruce up here with the PA. It had, just been showing signs of wear. We only had 2 monitor mixes down there, which, is hard when you have like a good-sized band.
Yeah.
So Jessica had mentioned Corky Wiseman, and the concert series itself floated around in different departments within the park board, which was kind of hard to get any consistency. Who really owns it? Is there funding? Can I please have board tape? Like, it was true story.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if I get in trouble for this, but
Then you should definitely say it.
Yes.
yeah.
Let's hear it.
I think it was still when you were there, we redid the cable runs underneath the seating for the band shell. So we had all this old wire, this old cruddy wire that had been actually, the conduit underneath was it was a pipe filled with water. So we had all this old cruddy copper, and I actually took it to the scrapyard and got like $40 for it and bought like board tape and gaff tape and Sharpies because I had nobody really.
That's great, just like the crackheads do when they steal it
Yeah.
out of the houses.
Yeah.
Now that's creative thinking.
Yeah, and I didn't keep any money. It was all for supplies for the concert series. But so long story short, we finally got the concert series in a department that believed in what it meant and what it did for the community. And we asked, hey, can we look into this? And I was asked to put together the proposal and everything. And Corky said, sure, let's go for it. So we, at that point, started working directly with the vendors that EV had recommended, and lo and behold, we have new boxes in the towers, actual subwoofers in front of the stage, and 4 monitor mixes now. And that's probably the highlight, is seeing that come from literally 0 funding or support to the hard work to get to a full-on new sound system down there.
Well, that kind of creative problem solving is not just in the government world, where funding is obviously going to be really low because the whole country is in such a hue and cry about the government spending too much money on this and this and this, whether it's true or not. But also in the for-profit sector in music, because revenue flow is different now than it was 20 years ago, and certainly it's always been like that in the nonprofit sector. But what all 3 of these have in common now is that you can't just like do the same old thing. You have to come up with ideas. I can just see you at the scrapyard, surrounded by crackheads. What are you going to use the money for? Crack. What are you going to use it for? Board tape. But those coming up with those creative new ideas for, like, how do we do more with less? How do we raise money? That's the only way. I see that all over now in all 3 of these areas that I'm talking about. What was your high point?
Oh boy, I would say, my high point was kind of maybe mixed, because there was so many. Coming from seemingly, like I was saying, a bag of keys and a stack of mismatched papers, to, where it ended up when I left the parks. One of my highlights was I had created like 300 pages of documentation on how to run this whole thing. And this is a year-round thing, you guys, where booking starts like January, hiring, training starts like April. We do all the marketing, promo, booking, hiring, firing, training, making sure the gear's working. There really isn't a downtime throughout the year to run this thing. And not only that, but movies got integrated with Music in the Parks. There's another guy who was always an advocate, Eric Rudolph, who's no longer there. He moved on too, but he was there throughout all 3 of our successions.
And which venues have movies?
Tuesdays, it's the music movie combo at Father Hennepin, and Fridays we do music movie combo with Lake Harriet. Otherwise, Monday through Saturday, it's all over.
Okay.
Yeah. So in addition to seeing the thousands of happy faces at all the venues and how magical the nights get, when the park board switched under departments, it was, I'm just going to say it, it's kind of with the good old boys, and they were really looking for somebody who had more of a business background. And when Geoff told me the story of how he and his wife had hung out at Lake Harriet when they were trying to decide if they were going to move to Minneapolis, and we're in this interview, and I just got goosebumps, and I'm like, yeah, dude, you're hired. You're in, don't worry. And I kind of saw as like, all right, I could stay in, just kind of that 3-year mark, and like try and play politics or like get out and leave it in a really good place and pass the buck on so that they couldn't go backwards. I called Geoff up in August, and I was like, dude, here's what's going on. You ready? He's like, yup. And I'd say, knowing that it would carry on and that I could leave it in good hands meant the world to me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But it's way bigger than just one person, you know, really is. So it's just so magical. I'm a little verklempt. It's a good thing.
Anyone who's been to any of these shows or lived in a city, and there are many cities the size of Minneapolis that have nothing like this. There's nothing like music and or movies at Lake Harriet in many other cities that you go to, you know. Try Detroit, which just declared bankruptcy last week. Try Cleveland. You know what I mean? They don't have music night in the parks. They have murder night. They have rape night in the parks. I mean, this is a thing about, what's that? No, they do. I've been there. No, it's, you go to these other cities, and if you've only lived in Minneapolis, I'm a little spoiled because I've lived here my whole life. You know, but you go to these other cities and you don't realize the active cultural scene that we have here, number one, and number two, the amount of money that flows through the arts, which it's always going to be tough. It's tough doing what you guys are doing, but you go to other cities where that doesn't happen, and it affects, it puts a pall on the city, a vibe on the city that we just don't have here. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so gray and blah. You know what I mean? And it starts really not even before the music, but with the park system itself that we have here in Minneapolis. And you guys would know more about why it is like that here, and you know why it isn't in other cities. I don't know why that is, but I know that we have the #1 park system for any urban area in the country. It's, you know, I mean, I think the only city that even comes close is New York City with Central Park. You know, but the amount of park space that we have within the urban area, and these bike trails, all these other things that I take them for granted, I admit, but when I talk to a lot of people, students at IPR and stuff that move here from other places, they're like, oh my God, you know, and they're overwhelmed at how nice it is. And so for you guys to take this and add the music and the movies on top of it, it's something that's easy to take for granted. It's kind of like the people who live in New York City and have never been to the Statue of Liberty, because it's like, oh yeah, there she is over there, whatever.
In 2008, I was interviewed by the National Parks and Rec magazine. And they did a spotlight on 3 cities around the country on their Music in the Parks program. And there is nothing like what we do here. And you guys, the thing is, like we were talking earlier, there's no budgets. The artists that perform, there's no budget to pay them. So sometimes artists will contact us, or we'll contact an artist. They're like, I'm sorry, I can't work for free. And it's like, dude, I totally understand. You know, it's totally cool. And it's like hard to book under those circumstances because you want to help support these artists, but you know, artists can sell merch, and you know, we help do promo and all this stuff. But really, I mean, the budget's for the coordinator and the techs, and then whatever can be scraped up for additional gear and board tape, and I mean, and it's like pulling teeth sometimes, but or at least it was when I was there. It's totally worth
Any
it.
of the bands that you talk to that don't want to play there for nothing, you should have them call me, because I've got my band. Everyone runs their bands differently, but I've got my band, because it is my band. It's not a democracy. It's my band. So the other side of that is that I give my bass player and drummer a guarantee for every gig, no matter what. They're always going to make a decent guarantee for playing with me, even if we're playing a benefit. And that's my idea. I want it that way. So I paid money for the privilege of playing at Lake Harriet this summer, and it's the best money I've spent all year. I've got it on my iCal shortly after Not like January 2nd, because I don't want to look slutty, or needy, but I'll be calling you guys, like a week into January, like, oh yeah, well, what's open at the park, because I want to do it again. Because it's, that was definitely the money I spent. I got way more out of it fun-wise. And it's a great way to reach new people. Plus, playing at Lake Harriet, you're playing for a fairly affluent crowd, so you are going to sell a lot of CDs and get in front of people that you want to get in front of that will actually have, they can afford to not just love your music, but back it up with buying a CD and stuff. So I think it's a great thing. And the vibe down there. The other thing I would say to IPR students is, besides you should try playing one of these gigs, go to one of these gigs. Look online at the schedule. The variety. It's not just rock bands. Let's talk about the variety of stuff that you guys have in these. How many shows did you have in 90 days? You say 200? Over 200? So you've got rock bands like my bands. You've got kid music bands.
Yeah, we've got everything really, from orchestras to community bands to rock, reggae,
jazz.
pop,
I saw at Lake Harriet.
jazz.
This summer.
Oh yeah, everything in between. And, you could imagine one day you have a rock band, the next day it's just a solo acoustic player, the next day it's a hip hop act. It's the variety is what makes it so special.
What are some of your favorites that you guys have all run for these run sound for these bands? What are a couple of your favorite shows that you've seen in the last few years? There must have been some that stand out as far as just because it's your kind of music or something.
I've always liked Viva Brazil. They're a fun group, and the musicians kind of change throughout the years, but they're always so fun to listen to and to see everybody dancing. That's a lot of fun for me. And then a new one this year is Step Rockets.
That
Who's
was gonna
that?
be my answer.
Step Rockets.
Step Rockets?
Yeah, they're a newer group, and I fell in love with them when they applied, and I was like, you're going to play at everything I can get you.
What kind of music is that?
I don't even know.
Sort of like electro pop, bass drums, keys and guitars, but they each also have some sort of synth or computer-based station that they also play.
I know what you mean about Viva Brazil, though, because it's impossible to be sad listening to Latin music like that. You cannot be sad. It's just not going to happen. It's too happy.
It is.
Yeah, that's why I love it that they use that music, the Cuban variety of it, in the show Dexter. Because, all that's going on in that show is killing and Cuban music. But you can't get bummed out about the killing because the music is so happy.
Yeah, keep on killing.
It's really a juxtaposition there. How about you, Jess? What's some of the nicest things that you've seen?
Well, I'd say some of the fun, there's a couple guys. One guy that does Elvis tribute, and another guy that does a Neil Diamond tribute. And they're a hoot, I got to say. They bring the crowds and people are dancing. I don't know if they're still around at all or not, but it's like Art Kistler and
Yeah, the Elvis tribute guy hasn't performed in a couple of years, but then the Neil Diamond guy, I continued to book him because on a Monday night he'd bring 2,000 people down to the band shell.
Yeah.
Which that's awesome, especially for a Monday night where it's typically more like 400 people. But actually 2 years ago when I tried to book him, or last year, he was in a car accident. So he was physically unable to perform.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, those guys are a blast. And the Elvis guy used to bring stuff to throw out to the crowd, and they go all out with costume changes and the whole bit, and their wives are there, and yeah, it was a good time. But also Davina and the Vagabonds, they're always bringing down the swing dancers.
Speaking of music that's impossible to be sad while listening to.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though she sings some sad songs, but not in the way that it's with the grit.
No, but
and
she's
the
so
soul.
funny and sexy and vaudeville and kind of bawdy, you know what I mean, that you just get swept up in it. Mm-hmm. And the players are really good in that band.
And then I know they're very particular, but I thought it was fascinating to work with the Minneapolis Pops Orchestra because they really do care about the music. They kind of schooled me in how to do orchestral music, and after a few times I'm like, hey, Dave Heading, you want to head up the Pops? Be their lead tech? Because, I think he's still doing it. Yep. Yeah. So he was really into that kind of stuff. And
Even when he moved down to Chicago, they would still bus him up to do the weekend shows.
Nice.
How do you mic up an orchestra like that at the Lake Harriet Band Shell?
Exactly.
No, I'm asking you.
Okay. Well, okay. So you've got your sections. At the time,
Well, they just got a new mic kit, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah, they bought their own kit.
They bought their
Oh,
own
okay.
kit that
Okay.
they're the only ones that they can use, and it's a lot of 414s that they throw up in each different section. So the violins, 1, 2, violas, cellos. I think they individually mic the upright basses, then you have the
Sure.
woodwinds and the trumpets, and I think they do some timpani, I think.
How many channels do you have on the board at Harriet now?
24,
24.
right?
Yep. 24.
And do you have a lot of, is it the board have effects on board?
No, it's analog with outboard gear.
So what are you using for outboard for your effects at Harriet?
I think it's just a little Lexicon dual effect engine.
Nice. Because outdoor, I mean, you must not be using a ton of verb and stuff like that, right? It's subtler? for
Yeah, it's a
outdoor?
lot more subtle unless you're
Yeah.
trying to do something. But
Right. Okay, so let's get some questions from you guys. Anybody here ever see a show at any of the Minneapolis parks? There we go. What have you guys seen? Or what venue? Harriet Pop's concert. So do we have any questions about how these guys possibly built this empire in a MacGyver-like fashion using nothing but scrap iron for board tape and 2 thimbles and some Q-tips? I want a question now, or I'm going to go take my mic off and carry it around, shove it in your face.
More generic question. If you could just share, like, your best advice to current IPR students how to become successful in general, now, other than obviously showing up for this would be a nice start, but other than that.
Best advice for IPR grads, which you all are, on how to become successful and get gigs like this or any other gigs. Molly, hit it.
That's a tough question. I would say make yourself irreplaceable. Do so many things, like all of us did. We did so many different things with the parks. Of like Jess would do event coordinating, and then Geoff got onto the movies part, and then I'm now doing the music and movies. So it's making yourself that person that it's really hard to get rid of.
Like where if you don't show up, they're screwed.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
I would say 2 things. One, you have to be able to put yourself out there a little bit, step out of your comfort zone, and be able to communicate well. My example is going to an IPR grad panel and just hearing Jess talk about the concert series and just introducing myself, and that led to an interview, which led to a job, which led to a bigger job, and
Taking a risk then.
yeah, taking a risk.
Because it is a risk. I mean,
It
you're
is.
putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and then there is sort of this like, oh, just say say yes to whatever, but you do have to be able to back it up a little bit, with some skills, and not just engineering. Like probably at least when I was there as a concert coordinator, I teched very little because I had so much other stuff to do. So sharpening your non-technical skills is equally important as your technical skills.
show up and bring a good attitude. I mean, that really is such a huge part of stuff. Show up on time, be early. That's really what's on time. On time is not 3 o'clock. It's 2:45.
Yeah.
And then just have a really good attitude. I mean, this is about doing what you love, and it's not always going to be exactly how you envisioned it. You have to be flexible and open to different experiences and opportunities, but no matter what, just bring a good attitude and really try. I mean, people try to shake you from your good attitude, but don't let them.
It's true, and that's one thing that all 3 of you guys have in common is people that, my wife always says, it's nice to be nice to the nice. You know what I mean? And I mean, I remember when I had you in class, and I remember saying this to my wife. I was like, there's this gal named Molly in my class. She's a lifer. She's going to be doing this for a living for the rest of her life, I could tell. And I didn't even remember what class it was, and it didn't matter. And it was because of what you guys are talking about here, where it's just like, you showed up, you were, it's like the opposite of being moody. With artists, it's a lot of artists kind of shoot themselves in the foot because they're like, I'm an artist, so I'm moody. And it's like, bye. I'll work with someone moody if I'm getting paid, I mean, hello, Paul Westerberg. That's not an easy gig. He's a tough guy to work with. He knows it. Everyone knows it. But I got paid for that. Now, I just did Communist Daughter's new record, produced that. Every single person in that band is absolutely a treat to spend time with. And I did the whole record betting on the come, nothing up front. If nothing ever happens at that record, I don't make a dime, and I wouldn't lose a minute's sleep over it because they show up on time with a great attitude and they're pleasant to be around. So if you're trying to build something with not a lot of money in the bank, that's like one of your secret weapons, I think, because people just I don't even think they think about it. They're just like, I like that Jessica. She asked me to do something, I'd do it. You know what I mean? We all have those people. You put people in two categories in your mind, whether you think about it consciously or not. People where they walk in the room and you go, and other people where they walk in the room and you're like, And if you're in the first half, you're going to get more out of people, like you guys have to. You have to get musicians to play for nothing.
Yeah, and using this job as an example, attitude is everything. The artists don't get paid, so I always thought of it from a customer service standpoint, like it's the least I could do is offer them a great attitude. I want, these bands that want to come back. I want them to be happy because then they'll put on a good show and not sort of hold the, hey, we play for free card over my head. So and they do that. There are bands that absolutely do that. So when I was there, I put them on the do not book list as soon as they mentioned.
So there is a do not book list.
Yes.
In here.
Was I ever on that list? Geoff?
No.
Okay. All of a sudden, this sounds like the McCarthy hearings.
Yeah.
There's a list.
Yeah.
Card carrying do not plays.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. It was a very short list. Most of the bands that play in the parks are very, very nice people, but there were some that just went beyond the line of like, I've given them everything I can to be nice, but then they just have to hold something over your head.
Yeah. It's like, hey, if you don't want to play for free, don't play for free.
Right. We're not twisting any arms.
Yeah.
We
Go
turn
play at the
people down.
Hexagon for $15.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Seriously, if you're talking about that small of amount of money, you know what I mean? Professionally speaking, I think you're better off playing at a Music in the Parks gig for free than you are playing at some super skanky club for $25. Because those people are going to pay a cover to see you and pay exorbitant prices for beer, whereas in the park, there's the chance, the probability, if you're good, someone's going to be walking around the park and going, what's that? Come in, and you've got a new fan. That's worth everything, I think.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, that happens all the time at Father Hennepin because that's such a big running route for
Sure.
people. And so they'll hear good music, and you can just see them just slow down and just stare, and they'll stop. So it's kind of fun to see that.
That's a win for a musician.
Yeah.
And from an artist standpoint, I mean, talking about the difference Music in the Parks versus clubs, a lot of people don't go to clubs. Music in the Parks is accessible to everybody at a reasonable time.
Yeah, families with kids who they might want to go see music, but they can't. It's like, hey, I got 3 kids under 8. I'm not clubbing.
Exactly. And to see these kids come out and just dance around and have a good time, and I mean, it's priceless.
It is.
And it's not just the kids that dance either. We have a collection of adults, a collection of favorites that dance down at the Lake Harriet Band Shell.
I am painfully aware of who you're talking about.
I consider it like a good luck thing, like a rabbit foot. I mean, if they show up, it's a good show.
Yeah. There used to be one guy that danced at Dancing Doug. I haven't seen him in a couple of years.
With the hat and the curly hair?
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a few years either.
Yeah.
He was just there last year.
Was he?
Is he?
Okay.
Yeah. He was down there having a good time.
Yeah. Doug has
That's
a good
good.
time all the time.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions for these guys here in front? Were you ever surprised to get a yes from a band that you wanted to play and they played for nothing?
Kevin.
Yeah. Kevin
No.
Bell.
Why?
No, because you're awesome. So.
And generous. See, I'm holding it. I'm getting to get on that do not play list or do not book list. Who else? There's some pretty
I got Molly Mayer this year, and I was really excited about that.
Oh, she's great.
I'm so excited.
I'm not
so-
surprised by that, though. She's a very generous, spirited
yeah.
person.
Friday at the band show, she'll be there.
This Friday, be there. Then, Rebecca, do you have a question?
Well, I just wondered about percentages of the number of students who are the techies, and does it turn over much? Because I happen to be singing at Minnehaha the same night that the bridge went down and Jessica with her father Hennigan. I remember the story a little differently. I think you told us to continue to play. Just FYI. No, and you were supposed to because they didn't want anybody moving.
No.
The city
Oh, right.
everybody stay where you are. Don't get on the highways. So you asked, our text called you and you said, keep playing.
Smart.
Suggestion.
Kept playing until there was lightning, and then we called you. But yeah, I always ran into IPR grads every time I've been to the parks, and so I wondered, what's the percentage of IPR people working tech, and does it turn over much?
What's the percentage of IPR working tech in the parks, and does it turn over much?
I don't know how many we've hired. A lot of them, I think, were word of mouth from IPR grads. I've hired this year, I think, 4 from IPR. Does that sound right?
Not bad.
But like on crew for a long time, like people I can remember that might not still be there, but like Ethan Bouchard, John Stoyevich, Sarah Stoyevich. I forget what her name was when she
Before they got married.
yeah, but she went through here. Tom Colvin. I think Chase was a student here for a minute.
So a lot.
Dave Heading.
Dave Heading, yeah.
Well, I had come and visited with Norbert and Jay, was it last year, I think? Asking, hey, who
Who's
do you
good?
have? And Jay, was able to give me, I think, 3 names right off the top of his head, and they ended up working, and they still work
Yeah.
for the park.
Z works.
Yep.
Yep.
Brittany.
Oh, Brittany
Oh,
Wallman.
Z?
Yep.
Yeah, who just did a tour for Shellac through Australia,
Yeah.
and I just recommended her for a Haley Bonner front of house tour because
great
her
for you.
manager emailed me and said, who's good? And there's a perfect example of what you're talking about with attitude. Z. Always positive, always on time. Like, what can I do? What can I do? Great reputation. So I said, call her. And he did. I think she's going to get the gig. And, Haley Bonner tour, that's got to pay something. That's a pretty good, she's doing well on the road. So, one other question before these guys got to go. Where would you, I got a question. This is a great question. I love this question.
We're ready.
I love it so much. I'm going to ask it slow so I can savor it. Where would you like it to see it go from here? What's your dream for the Music in the Parks system? Do you want to add venues, or do you want to add depth to the venues you have? What would be your dream? 1, 2, 3, starting with Molly. Sorry. Doesn't have to be reality based. Just your dream.
A dream.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because I love each of the venues, and so it's hard to when we're competing with each other because there's multiple concerts each night.
Sure.
But it's I don't know. I'd really love to see people, like 100 people every night at each of the different venues. That would be great. And then Lake Harriet, of course, 1,000 people a night.
Yeah. Because that's the jewel in the crown.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeff?
Well, if it's not reality based, then
Yeah.
domes over each. So
Domes.
there would be no more weather calls.
Nice.
Because that was my least favorite thing about coordinating is having to make weather calls and calling the band.
The one time you made me make the call. You were like, hey, you can play if you want to. You don't have to play if you don't want to. Just
well, that's the concert coordinator trick is put it in the hands of the artist.
I wussed.
Yeah.
I caved. I didn't
and then
play.
it was like the perfect night.
Yeah. I always wondered if I was risking getting put on the
No,
list
no,
for
never.
that one. I did
Actually,
feel
never.
bad about it.
Yeah.
Now
would-
I realized I was just being manipulated, so I'm happy. That's good. So
called
domes,
passing
you say.
passing the buck.
Geodesic domes or just a circular thing?
Well, biodome like things, complete with
Dude.
Pauly Shore, it's a built-in audience.
Buddy.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I would agree with Molly that just seeing each Lake Harriet is 7 days a week, but our other venues are 1 or 3 days a week. And just seeing the crowds consistently grow at each of those smaller venues. I mean, sure, there are tech needs. I mean, Lake Harriet, we'd love sponsors. Anybody out there? We would love a new mic kit down at
yes.
Lake Harriet. That would be fantastic. But aside from the technical needs, just seeing each of the venues grow and mature.
What do you need for those mics? Are fine down there when we were down there. What are you wishing you had?
Not 20 years old. Those
Old
mic-
stuff isn't necessarily bad, Molly.
Do you like talking into a spit full of microphone?
I've been doing this a long time, Molly. Most of the spit on those microphones is actually mine, so I'm just killing myself. What do you think, Jess? What's your dream?
I would love to see a dedicated grant writer for the program. There's so many grants on a state and national level that this program would qualify for if there was just a dedicated grant person. Somebody who really knows how to write them.
That's an art, a time-consuming art.
It's a great field if you enjoy writing. And kind of beyond that, when I was running the program, there were people that had passed away and left funds to the program, but it went to people higher up that weren't really involved in the program, and I never was consulted. I don't know exactly where it went. So
No trickle down?
No, and there's people out there that have been so moved by this throughout their life that they want to do this, and I'd like to see something established through the Parks Foundation that would be very
legacy.
cut and dry for legacy, and then the concert coordinator, the person on the front end knowing it the most intimately, would have the say on where those funds go.
Sounds logical. Well, thanks for coming, you guys. Really appreciate it. It's really great for these guys to see you guys do what you do, and we all appreciate it.